Now that we've discussed how to complete the square, we're going to try to complete the square of this general quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c. The first step was to get the constant on the right-hand side. This leaves me with ax squared plus bx is equal to negative c. We divide by the coefficient of x squared. That gives me that x squared plus b over ax is equal to negative c over a. On the side, I'll take the coefficient of x, divide by 2, which is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2, and squaring. This gives me b squared over 4a. And if I try to add that to both sides, I get x squared plus b over ax plus b squared over 4a equal to b squared over 4a minus c over a. If I factor the left, I get x plus b over 2a squared. And if I combine things on the right, I end up with b squared, sorry, this should actually be 4 over a squared. I forgot to square the a there. So we end up with b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Taking the square root of both sides gives me that x plus b over 2a is equal to plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over the square root of 4a squared will be 2a. And then finally, I can subtract the b over 2a from both sides to get that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this seems like a lot of work for not that much payoff, but it actually did give us something very important. Instead of completing the square from now on, we can just use this formula to actually find the answers without doing as much work. This gives us the quadratic formula, which says that if we start with any equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, then x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now we can solve all of these quadratic equations without having to complete the square. Here's our first example. 4x squared plus 8x plus 7 equal to 4. The first part with the quadratic formula is that you have to make sure it's equal to 0. So we'll subtract 4 from both sides to get 4x squared plus 8x plus 3 equal to 0. I then have negative b, which is 8, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 8, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 3, all over 2 times a, which is 4. And now we just need to simplify. 8 squared is 64, and negative 4 times 3 is negative 48. 2 times 4 is 8. I can now simplify the 64 minus 48 to get 16 over 8. We know the square root of 16 is 4, so now I have negative 8 plus or minus 4 over 8. So this gives us negative 8 plus 4 is negative 4, over 8 would be negative 1/2. Negative 8 minus 4 is negative 12, divided by 8 would be negative 3 over 2. So now we have our two solutions. Another example. Once again, we need to subtract the x from both sides so that all the terms are together. 2x squared minus x minus 36 equal to 0. Now I have x is equal to negative b. So b is negative 1, so I have negative 1, which is 1, plus or minus the square root of b, which is negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 36. All over 2 times a, which is 2. I now have 1 plus or minus the square root of 1, and then negative 4 times 2 times negative 36 is positive 288. All over 2 squared is 4. We can continue to simplify. This is now the square root of 289. All over 4. This square root of 289 is 17, so now I have 1 plus or minus 17 over 4. 1 plus 17 is 18, and then divided by 4 would give us 9 over 2. 1 minus 17 is negative 16, over 4 would be negative 4. So now I have my two answers, 9 over 2 and negative 4. Here, 8x squared plus 4x minus 16 equal to negative x squared. We'll start by adding the x squared to both sides. To get 9x squared plus 4x minus 16 is equal to 0. We now have negative b, which is 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 4, minus 4 times a, which is 9, times c, which is negative 16, all over 2 times a, which is 9. We want to continue to simplify this. 4 squared is going to be 16. And then we have negative 4 times 9 times negative 16, which gives us 576. Divided by 2 times 9, which is 18. Adding 16 and 576 gives us 592, all over 18. We can then simplify the square root. 592 can be rewritten as 16 times 37. And we know what the square root of 16 is. It's 4. We can reduce these irrational numbers, the ones with the square roots, as long as we can cancel in all 3 spots. On the denominator, in this first term on the top, and the second term. And we can see they all have a 2 in common. So I can rewrite this as negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 37 over 9. We'll look at one last example that doesn't appear to be immediately quadratic. 1 minus 1 over x minus 3 over x squared. However, if I multiply everything by x squared, I would get x squared minus x minus 3 equal to 0. And now we can see the quadratic. Using the quadratic formula, negative b would be negative 1, which is 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 3, all over 2 times a, which is 1. This gives us 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 plus 12 over 2. And I know the square root of, or 1 plus 12 is 13, so I have 1 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 2, which would be our final answer since this cannot be simplified any further.